Today we're going to be having a look at some iconic early 2000s Linksys routing and Wi-Fi gear, particularly my favorite router of all time, the Linksys WRT54G. And I'm not alone. These things have had a cult following for many years, not only for their overall reliability, but also because of one very important aspect. It's relatively straightforward to flash open source firmware on these things that unlock the hardware to its fullest potential, and people have been doing this for years. In this video, we're going to flash the venerable DD-WRT open source firmware onto this 54G and really unlock it. I haven't done this in over 15 years, so it's going to be super fun. It lets us do all sorts of interesting things, like turn this into a wireless bridge, which itself connects to a Wi-Fi network, and in turn allows you to plug in Ethernet-only devices into this thing to get network access. But we're going to have a look at some of this other gear as well and get a Wi-Fi 802.11b network going on our trusty Think Center over here running Windows XP. Now, wireless B was about 5 times slower than wireless G and almost 900 times slower than some of the Wi-Fi 6 access points I have in my house. So this will be a fun overview of what it was like to use these routers 20 years ago, or if you're like me, it might be a walk down memory lane. Let's get into it. We'll kick things off looking at all the Linksys gear I've got, starting with the least useful, which is this cable modem. I don't know if it's common in other countries, but in the US, you kind of rent your modem. You pay a monthly fee to the cable company, but you could also buy them. The cable company made it a pain in the ass to hook it up, as I recall, but you could have your own modem, and they were usually better, which was great. I would have loved to have one of these back in the day. I just thought it'd be interesting to show you this. Let's pull it out. All right, tons of stuff in the box. Here it is. I love that they followed the same form factor as their routers. We'll be stacking them all up later, don't worry. So of course your cable line comes in here and then Ethernet or USB out. This is a 100 megabit modem. It has no practical use today, but something I thought would be fun in the future is maybe pull the guts out, leave the LEDs, and get like a Raspberry Pi in here or something and have it be some, because I could reuse this Ethernet jack. I think that'd be sort of a fun, retro project to repurpose this into a Raspberry Pi case. Yeah, let me know if you have any ideas. Taking a look at the wireless B gear, we've got 2 routers. We'll dive into those in a second. Let's take a look at these dongles. This is a little cute little USB guy. I had a pair of these back in the day. Like, you could get this stuff super cheap, and I didn't have any money, so buy crap like this and network stuff at my house, and yeah, these worked pretty good. Obviously it was slow. Wireless B is max of 11 megabits, I think. Yes, right here on the package, 11 megabits. So yeah, it wasn't too speedy, especially once I had broadband, cable connection, but these were pretty cool. I always liked how the design system kind of flowed. They kept the blue, and then of course you can tell these are related products. So we'll definitely give this a shot on the XP machine. And then we've got a complete in-box PCI card, which presumably would be a little better than this thing. I guess we can do some comparisons. This is brand new. Let's open this up. I don't know what year this is from. Let's see if we can find out. Little setup guide, the physical installation guide. Probably don't need that. How to use the actual software. Registration, the software itself. Not much to it. Cool looking. It's complete inbox, but I'm not convinced this is actually new inbox. I think that was re-shrink wrapped at some point. This kind of just looks dingy. But of course, the antenna. Cool. We'll be getting that in the Think Center as well. And if you're curious, these are not compatible. This uses a bigger barrel type connector, and this one is much smaller. And here we have a pair of BEFW11S4s. These are actually the same model number. This one is an earlier revision. We'll look at that in a second. Obviously, they did some streamlining, which is pretty nice. This is the same form factor as the WRT54G. In fact, I had one of these back in the day. I used to own one, but I don't remember ever using it because I also had 2 of those WRT54Gs, and they're also wireless B, so there was kind of no point in having this one as well. And yeah, this thing is just an absolute chonker. Like, look at that guy. Same exact antennas. This one, the bigger one, has a port for an uplink, so maybe you could daisy chain them. And then it's got the 4 regular ports, and this one, of course, just has the 4. Here's the bottom of that bigger one. It says version 3.2 right there. And then here's the smaller one, and it says version 4. So yeah, later model, they did some streamlining. This one also has activity indicators, which is pretty cool. This one just probably has connection, whether or not you have a machine on the other end. So yeah, when we set up this network, this wireless B network, we're going to use the big boy here just because it's cooler looking. And by now, I'm sure you've started to notice one of the coolest things about the design of these Linksys machines is they stack perfectly. Let's stack up all the ones I got. Look at this tower of networking power. You could hook up a lot of computers and get them networking relatively slow to this bad boy. It really does make you just want to buy a lot of these and stack them together. And worth noting, the cable modem is a slightly different color than all the other ones. Wonder why? And then we've got the star of the show, the WRT54G. Got the outer box here. Run CD first. I will most definitely not be doing that. I don't think this one's entirely complete, but got the start here. Software, everything you'd expect. Wall wart. Let's get this out. Now, when we flash this guy later in the video, I'll go into much more detail about these things, but this is a very late model. This is a version 8. You can see here, V8 right here. One of the last ones of the 54Gs they ever made. The ones I had back in the day were probably from 2004, 2005. This one's quite a bit later, and I'll talk about the differences. One dead giveaway, though, that you've got one of these later ones is these antennas don't come off. Now, on the older models, they unscrew just like I was showing you with those older B routers. And you could actually buy bigger antennas, better antennas from Linksys, and I think I had a pair that I was using in college, actually. Lost to time now, though. So yeah, I picked this up on eBay. This is new to me, but it's the third one I've owned. So I've actually owned several of these WRT54Gs over the years. Always picked them up used. Linksys must have made it just a million of them. I don't think I've ever bought one new. It seemed like they were just available everywhere at thrift stores and stuff. But back in college, my buddies and I lived in a house that was sublet to 3 parties. So we were in the basement. There was a group on the main floor. There was another group on the second floor. We could see the main floor group's Wi-Fi. We saw that they had paid for internet when we moved into the house. We hadn't bought anything yet. So we went to them and said, hey, if you give us the Wi-Fi password, we'll split the bill with you. And they said, yeah. But this was like 2009 or something. Yeah, you could get these wireless dongles. These wireless Bs were cheap. You could get these anywhere for next to nothing. They were giving these away. But to get wireless G dongles, they were finicky. They were kind of expensive. They didn't work really well. We were college kids. We didn't have any money. And in case you can't tell, I like hardwiring my stuff. So I had a rig back then that only had Ethernet. And so this thing could pick up that Wi-Fi signal and turn it into Ethernet for me and the boys. And it worked great. So that was the driving force behind flashing this thing with DD-WRT, because I knew I could do that once I did that. So yeah, that's the history there. Well, I'd wanted to use this big boy for our wireless B setup, but I don't have the right power adapter. So we're going to go with this smaller one. You can see I've already got it plugged in. The big one wants 5 volts, 2 amps, and I don't have a barrel jack that fits the barrel connector. At some point, Linksys standardized on 12 volts, 1 amp or so. That's what that newer one is like. So yeah, all the other gear's 12 volts. But at any rate, we've got the IBM hooked up here. I've got this connected directly to port 1 on the router. We're going to see what the situation is. Hopefully it's just factory defaults, the typical IP address, or we'll have to figure out how to factory reset it. And then once we get the lay of the land, we'll try out some Wi-Fi stuff. Okay, first things first, we need to do a little housekeeping. Much better. So with any luck, we can just go to 192.168.1.1, and hopefully that's what that router is configured as. Doesn't look like it. Let's try 2. No. Okay. We'll do a hard reset. On this particular router, a factory reset should be as simple as holding this in for about 10 or 15 seconds. I suspect it worked. Wireless B was not illuminated before, so that had been turned off by the previous owner. Now it's on, so let's go see if we can talk to it. Come on. That was easy. Linksys is usually no username admin, lowercase. When's the last time you saw this? This is basically what all the Linksys routers of the age looked like. Awesome. Okay, this is great. Let's go take a look at wireless. Enabled Linksys. Let's just call this B. No password by default. Fantastic. Let's turn on, I don't know, just to see if it works. You get one shot there and they don't show you what it is. Hopefully I typed it right. Okay, some dates. This has a firmware from 05. Really unlikely that someone would have updated it, especially since this is just the stock, Linksys firmware. So this, maybe they were making these as late as that. So over in administration, you can go over to firmware upgrade, and we'll actually do this on the WRT54G. So it's pretty straightforward to upgrade firmwares on these things. So Linksys would provide updated firmware, and you'd download it and do it right here. Okay, let's set this up with an IP that's free on my network. .9 is available. I have a block of them that I leave reserved that the DHCP server doesn't hand out for this very case. I think I need to turn DHCP off because this is a second router on my network. We'll see how that goes. Oh yeah, okay. That was a good little warning. It reminded you that you changed the IP address. See if it works. Yeah, we're good. All right, let's get some Wi-Fi going. Got our little wireless B USB network adapter thing hooked up here. Power and link, that's looking good. So we'll see what kind of driver headache this is. Where else are you going to learn what it's like to set up a wireless B network on your Linksys BFW11S4? It is so hard to remember that serial name. Okay, back to Windows. Probably going to have to hunt down a driver for this. Yes, most definitely. How many times have you seen this in your life? Linksys still has a page for this item, a WUSB11, but it's got a little picture of it and null, so that's good. And then right when you think you're cooking on archive.org, there's the drivers I need. It says unable to load metadata from item location. So far so good. Wow, look at that. Who knows how many viruses I also installed, but looks like we've got an adapter. Check this out. Wireless networks. Why is one of my neighbors running a wireless B network with WPA2? Anyway, that's us. This is the one we just set up. Can we connect? All right, we are wirelessly connected on the same network with that wireless B router, and I'm able to access the settings page. This is so cool. Don't you love seeing this Windows XP wireless network connection UI? It's been so long. And I can't get over the fact that one of my neighbors has a wireless B network, and it's named Prairie's Palace. So now we're going to do the right thing and get this thing on the internet. You know, that's safe. That's good. And because I know you're following along at home, I hadn't done this in a long time. This cascading router business is kind of funny. So this is actually going back to my main network switch, and you don't actually want to plug this into the WAN input of your second router. This is a second router on my network now. You plug it into one of the ports. And let me show you the settings in the UI. So the important bits in the settings, I've given this thing a static address, and I've disabled the DHCP server. Maybe there's ways around that, I don't know. And then I did have it plugged in, so I've disabled the Ethernet port on the machine, the Think Center. And then over here, I've given this machine another free static address. I've told it that its default gateway is that second router, and then gave it a DNS. And then the moment of truth. This machine is online with a wireless B USB dongle connected to that old Linksys wireless B router. Let's try that PCI card. Nostalgic as it is, this thing's for amateurs. We got to switch to the big stuff. We got to squeeze as much as we can out of this wireless B connection. Here's my hard drive flopping around. Don't worry about that. Take this off first. I do like the look of this thing. It just looks cool. I think Linksys had great branding back then. Find an empty slot here. See, this is an improvement. The hard drive is more secure now, butted up against this, which I'm sure gets plenty hot. Look at that. Primo. This would have been just luxe back then. This thing's over 20 years old. I was perusing the literature for some date stamps. So yeah, it's at least from 2003. Let's get this thing fired up. We will be greatly reducing our virus exposure risk this time around because I have the actual software that it was boxed with. Let's run the CD, see what happens. Search removable media. Man, what a pleasure this used to be. I'm looking at the disk. It does have an installer. I want to see if it had any wonky software it came with. Here we go. Now we can get some work done. Look at these guys just doing business. I already installed the drivers, but we got to go through this bad boy. I am in infrastructure mode. I am connecting to an access point. Can you imagine being someone that didn't know anything about computers 20 years ago? And are you in infrastructure mode or ad hoc mode? The SSID is not that. I think we did -B. This is not going to be good. I love this UI though. Quite the look. You know, this would be a pretty slick way to get you like your Windows 98 machine online. That'd be kind of cool. Okay, this is what I was hoping for, that it came with some totally unnecessary software that Windows can just do for you. Well, XP, to be fair, XP. I suppose it was a different story with something like Windows 98. Yeah. Are we online? All right, again, because of my funny setup, I need to go set those static IPs. All right, set that. This thing noticed right away. It's just disconnected for some reason. It was looking good. Ooh, we're back. Come on. Is it really flip-flopping like that all the time? I think I should not have installed that crappy Linksys software and just stuck with the drivers. This one sees another one called Eagle Eye. Ugh. Alright, I uninstalled that Linksys crap and just used the drivers. Let's see if Windows can figure this out. I don't know why it thinks the password's different now. It's in a reboot loop. This is fine and good. Gonna stay? No. Alright, I'll be back. Well, we will be reporting this error directly to Microsoft. Damn it. I tried switching it to another PCI slot, and it just it crashes trying to connect to the network now. So, well, don't buy one of these. These things suck. Basically, it would try to connect to the network and crash the computer. I'm thinking it's drivers. So to be fair, the drivers on the disk are from 2003. This is running Service Pack 3 from 2008, so it's 5 years older. And the drivers I found online were exactly the same on the disk, so probably a driver issue. But yeah, this was the unsung hero the whole time. The USB network adapter worked right out of the box, no problem. Let's get this thing off my network and move on to a real router, the WRT54G. The WRT54G came out in really late 2002, and it's a little bit of a mouthful. So I'm pretty sure WRT stands for Wireless Router. 54 signifies the max 54 megabits per second of wireless G. And then G, of course, stands for Wireless G, Wi-Fi. All right, we're plugged in, and same sort of investigation mode. We've got the XP machine here plugged into port 1 of the router. We're going to see what kind of state it's in, see if we can access it. And then from there, one of three things is going to happen. We'll try to flash it and we'll brick the thing. That'd be kind of interesting. We'll flash it and succeed. That'd be nice. Or 3, there's a non-zero chance that this thing's already running a third-party software, because this was such a popular thing to be doing. But first, let's see if we can talk to it. Windows has not been impressed with my shenanigans. All right, this one is reachable at the default 192.161.1.1. Let's see if it's the default no username admin. No. Admin doesn't work. All right, we need to factory reset this one as well. No surprise there. It's the same story with this one. You just hold in the reset for 10, 15 seconds. And when we flash the firmware, we will learn about a much more aggressive 30-30-30 reset, which is required when you're doing firmware work on these things. We are in. Didn't even need a username or password. Interesting. Okay, this is a WRT54G version 8.0. That's going to be really important when we're choosing which third-party firmware we're going to use with this thing. Taking a look at the wireless settings. So this thing is capable of B and G. If you remember on that B router, you didn't get to choose. So we'll leave it mixed just for fun. Let's look at wireless security. I'm just going to leave it off. It's not going to be online very long. What's life without a little danger? We're going to do the same story. Get this thing set to 9. A dead giveaway, actually, that your Linksys router is working is if your computer that's plugged in has been assigned something 100 and up, because by default they start at 100. When I plugged this thing in right away, it had a 100 address, and so that was like a dead giveaway that the router was working, so that was encouraging. And just for those curious, this firmware version is from 2007, so still a fairly old router, but one of the much newer versions. And of course we got to get this thing connected over wireless G. That wireless B experience wasn't going to discourage me. We've got the wireless G version, and it's going to be great, way better, because the G stands for good. And this one I think actually is complete in box, brand new, because it has a price sticker on it. $70 back in, I don't know, 2004-ish. 115 bucks adjusted for inflation today, so not cheap. I'm never too worried about shrink wrap, but I am going to try to preserve that price sticker. And if I mess up and I can't, I'll throw it in the box. I was able to get it out of there without messing up the sticker. Yeah, this feels like it's never been opened before. That other one was all loose and seemed kind of dirty, and I think the card was in bubble wrap, which obviously they wouldn't have shipped a card in bubble wrap. They would use anti-static bags. What do we got here? The usual suspects software, thank God. Nice antenna. It's always fascinating to see such obvious examples of progress. This one also handles wireless B. These are just a year or so apart, maybe 2 years. This one's 5 times faster with wireless G, half the size. Just incredible how fast things move. Or were moving back then anyway. Really cool. Slight color variation. Hopefully that shows up on camera in the purplish blue color Linksys was using. Still a slick looking card, in my opinion. Okay, well, not all progress is good. It's not nearly as good of a hard drive support bracket as the wireless B card was. Looking good. This IBM is a breeze to work on, totally toolless. Been really nice for this particular video. Should be pretty much the same story as the other one, except hopefully this one works. Yep, it sees my actual networks. I forgot about that. Let's get on the one we just set up. Please don't crash the computer. I keep forgetting to do this. On the network, effortless. I can't get it to DNS correctly, but that's okay. It's on the network. Now it's going to get sketchy. Now, Linksys made a lot of variations of these routers. There's this original WRT54G, but there's a GS, a GL, a GX, and all that stuff. But even amongst just these initial original 54Gs, there's variations. So 2 sort of historical significant things to note. When they switched to version 5, they cut the RAM in half. And so this obviously makes it harder to run custom firmwares. They'll run just fine in 4 megabytes, or they were up to that point. And so the folks over at DD-WRT had to go develop a micro version, basically, that could handle 2 megabytes. And another very significant thing, if you're thinking about doing this, 7.0 is useless in terms of flashing. It's not supported. They switched over to a different chip away from Broadcom just for this one 7.0 revision. So if you're going to try to do that, don't even bother. It doesn't support third-party software. So what we've got, based on what I was looking at the back of the case and in the UI, is an 8.0. This is really important when you're going to start flashing. So here we are over at DD-WRT.com, and they have very in-depth guides about what you need to do for whichever version of the router you have. I would have been flashing back in the day, maybe a 3 or a 4, and it was quite straightforward back then on these older units. If you have one of these older units, like, it's not nearly as stressful. So you literally just take the bin and go to that UI I was showing you earlier with the upgrade, and that's it. It's like super easy. Now, let's go take a look at my V8.0 version I've got. You can see, we don't need to read through all this. I'll give you the rundown, but there is a lot more to do. We have to flash it with a preliminary firmware that's going to get the router ready to accept the real DD-WRT micro firmware over TFTP. So yeah, it's going to be a process. It's always very stressful doing things like this where you might brick a unit, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, this isn't necessarily going to be a tutorial on how to do this. I've never done this particular flash before, but I'll try to explain what I'm doing as I go along, and I'm just following the steps from the DD-WRT wiki. First things first, I have set a default gateway to the default 192.168.1.1. I've set myself to a static address of 100. That's the Linksys default. And then we're going to be going offline. So we're just going to have a local network with the router connected to the machine on port 1. And back in the day, this might have been your only computer. So the DD-WRT wiki has all these recommendations about saving and printing off for offline use the instructions in case you totally break your router and you can't get back online. Hopefully that doesn't happen today. I have the very first firmware file. This is going to be flashed right away with the Linksys UI, and that's going to set up the router to be ready to accept the actual DD-WRT firmware over TFTP. First things first, we need to perform a 30-30-30 reset. Okay, I'm about to teach you a famous maneuver among 54G enthusiasts. This is a 30-30-30 hard reset. Totally factory resets the machine and actually clears its NVRAM. This is incredibly critical when you're upgrading or changing firmwares so that the firmware doesn't read stuff that it shouldn't from the previous firmware. With the machine powered on, you hold the reset for a full 30 seconds. You continue to hold reset, pull the power out, wait 30 more seconds, never letting go of reset, power back in, 30 more seconds. For a total of 90 seconds, the reset was held the whole time. That's why it's called a 30-30-30. So I'm going to do that off camera. It's awkward. And then we'll go back to Windows. Okay, so now when we go hit the router, we're in this management mode. You may think this is where you'd want to put that firmware, but the instructions say you don't want to do it here. So I'm going to power cycle the router, and theoretically we'll go back to the GUI. Power cycled the router, and when I say power cycle, I mean I just pulled the power out and put it back in, not the 30-30-30 reset, though we will be doing another one of those later. So now we're going to go over here in the UI to firmware upgrade. And I have a little folder ready with everything we need. This VxWorks killer is the first one we want. And we're going to flash that. The instructions say to wait, quote, 5 full Earth minutes. So I'm just going to give this thing 10 minutes. It said the longer the better, and then we'll be back. I have waited no less than 10 whole Earth minutes. So here's where it gets a little stressful. You can't reach the router's UI anymore. But if things are going well, at least to this point, we should be able to ping it, which we can. So the router is responding to ping. We're on the same network. That's great. Now we're going to run TFTP, which will hopefully flash the actual firmware onto the router now. In my case, I'm kind of lucky with Windows XP. It already has TFTP enabled and available to it. Let's go and see what happens. I have never done it this way before. That was quick. Anticlimactic. Now, the instructions are saying that it will automatically boot, and I need to wait at least 2 minutes. Longer is better. I'm going to wait another 10 minutes. I'll be back. I might have missed a step. It's still kind of running that Linksys stuff. I think I maybe was supposed to power cycle the router after that first firmware flash. Let's find out. It worked. Amazing. I have not seen this for so long. So you know you're in good shape when it's asking you to reset all the passwords and stuff. Yes. All admin. I'm never going to remember anything else. Is it going to let me? Just hangs at the change password. I think what I'm going to do is a full 30-30-30. It actually said to do that at the end, and I haven't done that yet. Okay, did the hard reset. Read online that maybe you just leave the username. It's root by default. Let's see if just changing the password will get me in. It was IE. There's some bug in the UI and IE and you can't get in. Anyway, Firefox works. This is so cool. I have not seen this in well over 10 years, I would bet. We can do really cool stuff now. Let's have a look around. All right, I'm getting way too excited. Let's just see if we can connect to it with that PCI card. So I'm going to disable the LAN connection. Going to enable this one. Let's have a look here. I see our unsecured DD-WRT. What a different time back when you just plugged your new router in into your internet and bam, it was broadcasting. Yeah, we're connected. Should theoretically be able to manage this over the wireless. And we can. Okay, this thing is working great. Let's do something more interesting. We're going to recreate my college setup. Just so you know I'm not cheating, pulled this out. This thing was great, by the way. this machine has no Wi-Fi capabilities anymore. What's going to happen is, with this new firmware, we can tell this thing to connect as a client to my actual Wi-Fi in the house, and then it can pass the internet over Ethernet to this machine over here, effectively becoming a Wi-Fi adapter for this or anything else you want to plug in. Now, there's a billion tutorials on how to do this online, so I'm just going to breeze through it. But the basic idea is, with this firmware, I can set this thing up as a client bridge, and then in the wireless security settings, I can actually tell it to connect to my other router, and I think you get the idea. So there's a bunch of little things you have to fiddle with. I'm going to, mess it up 50 times and have to factory reset it. So I'm going to breeze through this. This is a pretty key piece. So this is how you actually join the other network. Another cool thing about this, you're not using your WAN port, and you can actually just assign it as a 5th port on the router. Pretty cool feature. Man, this is bringing back some memories. It worked. This thing is online via that router, wirelessly, so to speak, and it's totally transparent to the machine. It's getting an IP address from the main router and everything. So awesome. I haven't done this in a long time. Just to reiterate, this thing is picking up the Wi-Fi from my network, spitting it out like a switch on the back here for this guy, all without any wireless adapters or anything. All because we were able to flash that better firmware on this thing. I'm really glad I was able to get that working. Like I said, I hadn't done that in 15 years or something. That was really fun. If you find one of these things, these 54Gs, at a thrift store for a few bucks, pick it up and try flashing it just for fun, just to see what it was like. They're incredible units. Being able to flash that custom firmware and take advantage of the hardware kind of turned them into like a prosumer unit. Sort of the Unify gear of its day, if I can make such a bold claim. I'm really glad I was able to get so much of this stuff working, especially DD-WRT on that thing. And I hope you enjoyed following along, and maybe it'll inspire you to mess around with some of this stuff yourself. If you want to support the channel, I'd really love it if you'd subscribe. I also have a Patreon where I try to post behind the scenes videos and the occasional early video. But rest assured, I've got plenty of projects rolling, more videos to film, and until then, I'll see you in the next one.